Thanks for tuning in to the Diaphragm Dynasty. I'm back with another topic, and today I'll be talking about the Weeknd's beauty behind the madness, the impact of this album, and what it did for his career, and what I think it did for music as well. So this album put the Weeknd in the spotlight. It wasn't his first project or his first album that he or it wasn't his first project that he released or his first body of work. He had an album before this and put out way more songs before this, but this is the album that put him over the top. This was his thriller, so to speak, or this was his Reasonable Doubt or Biggie's Ready to Die or Brandy's Full Moon or Brandy's Angel in Disguise. It was one of those. It was that had that big of an impact, especially pop wise. Now, some of this album is considered pop, which I cover mostly R&B on this Diaphragm Dynasty, but this album had a lot of great elements of R&B and very passionate singing, and a lot of it was very relevant and needed for the time back in 2015. Now, mostly when I don't know about you, but when I listen to songs and I listen to albums or I think about songs and albums, I think about exactly where I was when the time happened when these projects or songs were released. So I remember exactly where I was working in 2015. I remember exactly what I was doing, the time in my life I was at, everything I was going through. And it always brings back great memories when I think about this time. And this album definitely is one of those albums where I can go pinpoint exactly what I was doing at that time. But for The Weeknd, I bet it was even exponentially better for him because of all the success that he had and the hard work that he put in, the great songwriting that he does. I'm definitely going to cover him on the Behind the Pen episode eventually, but his songwriting is definitely amazing. But this album gave him that commercial success, as I talked about previously, to put him over the top, going 6 times platinum with this album. He had he had songs that appeared on the Madden soundtrack, which was "I Can't Feel My Face," and then he had a song on the 50 Shades of Grey soundtrack as well, the "Earned It" song. So he had that great appeal, great writing, great production. He always has great top-notch production. It sounds very, expensive, and it sounds very intuitive, and it sounds very for the time and ahead of his time as well. But during this time, the Earned It and Can't Feel My Face songs were everywhere, and everyone was singing these songs, even those people that claim not to like, black music or claim to not like, oh, bless you, urban style music. Um, these people were still enjoying these songs because when he sung them, it was just undeniable hits. And that's sometimes what you have to do as great artists, especially if you're a urban artist. You have to make these undeniable hits for them to cross over, for people to realize, to say, oh, this is not just some black stuff, or this is not just some Hispanic stuff, or this is not just some minority stuff. People feel, if it's undeniable and their friends are singing it and their family is singing it, they'll catch on and they'll start singing it as well. So it helps transcend cultures and beliefs as well when you have great music. And this album definitely was that. So, um, I, there were important songs, um, to this album, but I think this, like I talked about before, this album was thriller-esque for him because there were not a lot of skips on this album. There was a lot of great content, a lot of great singing, a lot of songwriting, the production, the whole marriage between everything put together. Very great collective album that he put together. And he was able to later to parlay this momentum into having a Super Bowl halftime performance, which was great as well. He performed all the great songs that we know and loved from him. Blinded by the light, and all those different songs that he came out a lot later in his career. But he's always had the most consistency as far as pop artists or R&B artists go. He never gives you a project where you say, "Well, he just messed up that whole project." A lot of his music is stellar and it's ahead of his time. He has a very Michael Jackson sounding voice as well, which is unique for an artist to have. Not many artists can replicate that, but I think he is not trying to do that. I think that's just his natural singing voice, and it just happens to sound a lot like Michael Jackson. So if you're not careful, you'll think it's Michael Jackson when it's singing. But this album was the foundation for his success as well. He had a plethora of hits. Think about the song "Often." That song was out everywhere. It was on the radio charts, and everywhere that you can hear music. The Hills, which was a big song, which he had a remix with Nicki Minaj. So he got a lot of people um, on his train as far as believing in him as an artist, because I believe the label pushed this album a lot, and then eventually they reaped the benefits of it because they believed in him. But that song earned it, started everything to have this whole train moving. But his writing style is very similar to Frank Ocean's too, I think, on this album, because they don't traditionally write like an R&B artist. They write like poets, and they write like authors of books, a John Grisham, if you will, or um, one of those great writers. They're in that same ballpark. So Frank Ocean, I'll talk about him on the Behind the Pen episode as well. But they do a very good job of just writing very descriptively and giving you a picture of everything just from listening to their voices. But other than Earned It, Real Life is a very good song as well. And then Tell Your Friends are two of my favorite songs on the album, just because, like I talked about before, it's the songwriting, it's the singing, it's the production, it's the whole piece. But this was one of my favorite albums, especially in 2015. I'm pretty sure it was my favorite album back then, especially R&B wise. But if you haven't checked out the album, definitely check it out, and you won't regret it. And as always, until next time, I'll see you next time.